Now it's how to invest, how to manage your money, right? These are adult things you really don't get in high school or even college. This is something you need to learn from shows like this, from YouTube, from books, right? Be a lifelong learner on investing, on cash flow management, and take this lesson or this talk on it being a game and figure out your own strategy. What is your definition of winning the game? How do you get there? How many years do you think you could do it in?
Welcome back to another episode of The Donkey and the D with your host, Brett and Laura Shotkavis, where we talk all things marriage, entrepreneurship, and finances. And we know, we've talked about this before, the top two things that y'all hate talking about is sex and finances. Well, today we're talking about finances. So it's another, I think, comfortable conversation. We love talking about finances. It's not uncomfortable for us because we talked about it so many times. So we're hopeful that the listeners will get comfortable once they start talking to their spouse about these things.
That's right. So we're talking about financial freedom today. And it is the goal. It's the goal for us, for many people, to hit financial freedom. But I want to talk about it today as a game, because we both think that we are playing a game, right? There's rules, there's a system, there is winners, there is losers to this game. But I don't think a lot of people really realize that they're part of a money game, that there actually is a financial freedom game that they are pursuing to win or to lose, and they may not even know that they are part of this game.
I think most people think that it's a luck, that it's you either have good luck in this or you have bad luck. And I think majority of people think because I'm in a bad financial situation, I have bad luck. It's just luck. And I don't think that they realize that it's actually their actions that they are taking that is creating their own good or bad luck.
Definitely luck, but also people will say, like, it's my upbringing, it's the location I was born in, it's my parents, it's my lack of parents, or I didn't have a father figure, right? Like, I didn't have the opportunity that other people had, which is kind of luck, but kind of upbringing also. Not acknowledging that they are in someone else's game, right? When you go to work, your boss, the owner of that company, right? They are playing a game and you are a tool towards their financial freedom game, right? So if you are not knowing that you're in a game, right? If you don't have your own game, then you're really a pawn in someone else's game. And it's okay to be a pawn in someone else's game, right? Like everybody is. Not everyone is built for entrepreneurship to, create their own chessboard and move all these different pieces around. But even if you are an employee working for someone else and you are building their dream, getting them towards financial freedom, early retirement, you can still, and that's what I want to talk about today, have your own smaller game that you are in control of, and you need to be working both sides of this, right? You're taking care of your active income, but you have your own little game going on the side to get you through strategies and things that we'll talk about today to get you to your own win of, the financial freedom game.
I think that we were essentially a tool for somebody else for so many years. And to be honest with you, I had 3 jobs at one time when Brett was going through the fire academy. And so I was a tool for somebody else in 3 different spheres, 3 different areas of work. And I think that, to be honest, that was kind of necessary for that time in our life to build not only the finances or the means that we needed, but also the grit behind it too. And so I think it's important for people to know that sometimes you just have those seasons where you are working for somebody else, maybe 1 or 2 jobs, maybe even 3 jobs, and kind of building those skills and building your finances so that you then can maybe break off of one and then start your own gig based on the things you've learned from those 2 or 3 jobs and also based on the financial means that you've gained from those 2 or 3 jobs.
Well, that season of life, we had no idea about this financial freedom game, right? We grew up, at least I did specifically, my dad was playing the pension game, right? Like, how do I work for the government for a certain amount of years with a certain percentage of my paycheck, get to retirement at a certain age, and now I can get a pension for the rest of my life? That's a game right there, right? There's lots of different types of games. People have, the military as a game, quote unquote. Here's how I get to retirement after a certain amount of time in the military. So I was going through this thing on, pursuing being a firefighter, thinking, I don't really like this job, but you know what? After 30 years of it, I can get to 6 figures in, retirement play. And you were working at the city and a job at a cubicle that you despised with the same objective. We were taught this game. And it wasn't till we read Rich Dad, Poor Dad that we heard about financial freedom. And then really, as we continue to research and dive into this, had this understanding that, you know what? This is just another game. This is just like Monopoly. Like, there are winners and there are losers. There are strategies to win at this game that, now we can identify what winning is for us. And it's different for everyone if you were playing this financial freedom game. But I think to start out here, the first point, like, I know a lot of people, younger people going through college, kind of more in entry level positions. I would bet that most people who work for us as a caregiver, they do not know what this game means. Mm-hmm. Like, they don't have a plan for retirement for these things, right? They don't know that there is a hidden game that is happening behind them, and they are helping us get to that game or that win, right? Like, it's over their head. It was over our head until, like, gosh, late 20s, 30 years old. Mm-hmm. And then we realized, like, oh my gosh, there's a whole other game being played here, and we are part of someone else's early retirement play. We need to run our own game here.
Mm-hmm. So you referenced Monopoly, and I know we're 80s kids. We played Monopoly all the time. At least I did with my siblings, as during the summer and such. And it goes for a couple hours, as it always does. It's a very long game. You go around, around the entire board, and you land on certain things. And sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you're unlucky. But I think at the end of the day, when the game is over, the person who had the most hotels or real estate were the ones that won. And I think you kind of learn that as you play it so many times, that in the beginning, even if you have to pay for that one house on that one, Park Place or whatever it may be, it's kind of risky, right? Like, you're like, if I spend this much on this house, like, I don't know, I'm not going to have much money in the bank, quote unquote. I don't know if I should do it. But now that we know the strategy of Monopoly, when we play with our girls now, we know everything we land on, we are buying. Like, we don't even care. We're just going to buy it all. And so I think it took time to learn that. And so when you kind of reference that Monopoly and you put it into real world, it's one of those things where you're scared to play in the beginning because you don't quite know the rules, and you're kind of like dipping your toe in, like, is this the right way to play? I'm not sure. Am I going to lose it all? Like, you kind of have that fear that comes in. But I think that the only way to actually know if it works is to obviously see other people have done it before and follow in their footsteps, but to actually play, to actually take that risk, roll the dice, buy those houses and take that risk.
So, yeah, usually the person who wins Monopoly, right? They're the one who has the hotel on the end of the board, right? The
Park Place, Boardwalk, the blue. Yeah. It's the blue one.
The blues, then there's the greens and yellows. Those are good too. But it's just like life. Like, you're going around this board in Monopoly, you pass go, you get $200, right? That's like your job, your active income, right? But the person who wins at real life is the person who can retire. And Monopoly is such an amazing analogy for that, because you collect real estate, and you can buy cheap ones, you can buy expensive ones. You can upgrade those real estate, with houses and then hotels. And if you're going to win Monopoly, you're the one who has the most hotels. And that is exactly the same at real life. It is real property or assets, right? Whether it's real estate or whether it's some other type of asset, you need to learn the system, the strategy to go through life, have some type of active income, right? Pass go over and over again and collect $200, but then also be investing in real estate. So I would say that's really the two different games here, right? If you have your active income, you're going around the board, passing go, you're working for the man, and that's totally okay. I'm not saying go quit your job, be an entrepreneur. That's not for everyone. But that's you building someone else's dream. They have their own board that you're a pawn in, but you need to be collecting that pieces of real estate or other type of assets. Just like in the game, this is your slow play. This is your 10, 15, 20-year play to get to your own win, where you have now your passive income exceeding your active spend, right? I think that is what I kind of want to talk about next, is if we're saying this is a game, well, how do you actually win the game? What does that look like? Because it's, in my opinion, there's not a hard line, like this is how you win, right? People can set up their own rules for this, their own definitions for winning at financial freedom or early retirement or however you want to call that.
Well, it sounds like, and we've talked about this before, but it sounds like to me that you define winning the financial freedom game as your passive income exceeds your expenses.
Yeah, that's the simplest way that I know to describe it.
So if that's essentially winning, I feel like that can be done in so many different ways. And so there's not just one way. I mean, there's probably thousands, hundreds of thousands of ways this can be done. And so there's not one specific way to do it. And so I think if there's that one goal, having that passive income that exceeds your expenses, knowing how much your expenses are per month, I think is an important thing to know so that you can know how much passive income you need and able to cover that. So if that's the actual winning, that's what you do to win, I think that's fairly easy to wrap your mind around.
It's easy to understand. It's harder to implement. So I think we can expand on this because there's multiple different ways to win at this game where other people would consider, no, that's not winning for me at all. That's completely opposite. Because like you said, you have two different numbers here. You have your passive income number, and then you have your expenses number. And you can do one of two ways. You can push hard to increase your passive income incredibly high to get to that level that now you win, or the opposite. You can push down your expenses as low as possible and get to that level even faster. So it's really a personal preference. And I've seen people who their goal is to retire by like 35, right? And they still have young kids in the house, and maybe they homeschool and they literally bought an RV and they have some type of investments, right? Let's just call it real estate for this example. And they have, $3 or $4 or $5 grand worth of passive income, and they only spend $3,500 and they live on, just more than rice and beans, right? And like, that is their definition of win. If that was me, like I hated my job so much and I wanted to spend time with my kids and my babies that I'm willing to homeschool and live in an RV and not really take big trips or vacations or have fancy clothes or have a new car, right? Like, but this is my definition of a win. It's really for you to pick. Do you want to stay on the low spend side, or do you want to be on the high spend side? Because it can really take really the time aspect of this for you to decide. Like, do I want to get there in 3 to 5 years? Or is this a long play where I want to stay at a certain lifestyle level and it might take me 20 years to work, the system, work for the man, increase my income and cut my expenses in order to save that personal profit in order to continue to invest. And that might take a longer period of time if you said, hey, I wanted to keep my lifestyle at a certain level.
So for us in the beginning, when we first read Rich Dad Poor Dad and were aware of, active income versus passive income and financial freedom, those were all new things to us. I think we took the route of decreasing our expenses. So we didn't eat out as much. We didn't, do fun, elaborate vacations. We were saving that money to purchase assets. So it wasn't like we were withholding and eating rice and beans to just not work. That wasn't our goal. Our goal was to still work hard and increase our income, decrease our expenses, save that extra income that we were making, and then put that away and build up to purchase assets. So that was our goal. That's still our goal. That's still something that we do. We have increased our expenses a little bit as we increase our income, but we are also increasing our assets at the same time. Proportionally.
Like exactly. On a percentage, right? I think, we cut back a lot of our expenses, and I still think we do not spend relative to our income now, right? Like, mm-hmm. We still save a majority of our income, and our income from back then compared to now is drastically different.
Yeah.
But I would say probably now we still, percentage-wise, maybe even spend less. Even though we spend more dollars per month, we might spend a lower percentage than what it was back then.
But if you have a higher income, the percentage is,
So nonetheless, we are still saving, right? Yes. Like, we got to that place where we technically hit the financial freedom finish line for us, but we still are like, okay, well, we weren't going to retire. We weren't going to go and do one of these things where we talked about like buy an RV and travel around.
We would drive each other crazy.
Not what we want to do, right?
Yeah.
But I guess that goes back to my point is you can define what your win is for financial freedom. Some people want to get out of this rat race. They hate their job so much that this is their lifestyle they want to choose. Let's get there in 5 years. Cool. Do that. Some people, it might be like, hey, here's a long-term 20-year play. I really love what I do. I don't want to stop working, but let's continue to slow build And, here's 20 or 30 years of when I'm in my 60s, now I have the freedom to retire. And so you can go at this however you want to go at it.
So we're talking about winning that financial freedom game, and that in every game there's strategy. And when you say that, I don't know why I think of Michael Jordan. I think of all the amazing athletes that are out there that you think don't have a strategy, but their strategy is so much more elite than the people in their field that they're playing against. And so I think most people are like, oh, Michael Jordan just had natural talent, or Kobe Bryant just natural talent. Same thing with Tiger Woods. Oh, but I don't think people realize all the effort and time that it took behind the scenes of the strategy that they had in play, that they implemented in their life so they could be ahead of the game. And so there are so many different strategies you can play or utilize and input in your life so that you can win this financial freedom game. And I think because there are many losers in this game, they don't realize, first of all, that it is a game. And then second of all, they don't realize that they have to employ strategies in order to win the game.
So I would break strategies into really two parts. The first part of it, I think, is the hardest part for most people to get to, and they never get to the second. The first part of it is a personal profit or a family profit, and that's the term that I would give it. If you compare it to a business, right, you have income and your expenses, and then whatever's left over at the end of the year, that's your business profit. It's the same thing for your family or for your person, right? And you could look at it monthly mostly. If I make $5,000 a month and I spend $5,000 a month, I have a $0 personal profit, right? And you need to break this down on a monthly basis to say, okay, how my strategy is right now is how do I increase my income as high as I can, decrease my expenses as low as I can reasonably to maximize a personal profit month over month over month. And how do I save that money? That is really the strategy here, is there just needs to be more money left at the end of the month. So instead of you and I leaving it to chance and hopefully by the 20th of the month, we still have now savings, we put that in the beginning of the month, right? We're paying ourselves first. We literally created 6 different accounts for everything that we do, right? Multiple bank accounts, so that literally just like when you get a paycheck from the government, the IRS pulls the taxes out first, they are paying themselves first. They do not trust you. It's the same thing. I don't trust myself. I will find some type of problem or emergency that money needs to go to by the 25th of the month, right? So on the 1st of the month, I'm going to take that money and I'm going to put it aside into my own savings account. I call it a sacred account. And that's really just me making sure that I am really protecting myself from myself, paying myself first. And I think that's really what people need to learn as far as a strategy is, how do I get to a place where every single month I am saving a certain percentage of my income? And then from there, it's just how do I continue to bump up this percentage? There's only so much you can cut year after year from your expenses. You have unlimited possibility to increase your income. Every single year, you should be pushing that up. And I think that's really the focus, is creating a reasonable budget for cutting your expenses and then maintaining, and then putting all of your attention and energy towards income. How do I develop skills to continue to increase my active income, with the intention that every single year I have more personal profit that I am putting into a savings account, a sacred account, a mutual fund, whatever you want to do. And I think that would be part 1 to this.
So from what I just heard, it sounds to me like majority of people are employing a losing strategy within their finances.
For sure.
Because I would say if you were to poll 1,000 people and ask them if they're pulling out 10% of their income and putting it in the sacred account, they'd be like, what are you talking about? No. When I get paid, it's already gone within an hour. It's already employed to all these different, utilities and mortgage and car payment, insurance.
Yeah.
I think most people would be like, I don't have enough money to pull aside and put it into something sacred.
Yeah. Right. And that's because they're not paying themselves first.
Yeah.
Every dollar should have a name on it. And again, needs to be some type of budget meeting between you and your spouse, between your family, to say, here are our priorities. There's totally no problem with splurging on some things. Just pick one thing. Everything else needs to be cut, right? And that's really what we did. We went broke for a decade plus and just increased our percentage of personal profit every single year. Every single year, we were stacking more chips away into the sacred account. And then that really pushes us forward to the next part of this, the part 2 of the strategy, which is what do you do with the money that you have sitting there, right? And you can set aside some money in your personal savings account for emergency fund and rainy day fund, all that kind of stuff, right? You want to put $3 or $5 grand over there, totally fine. After that, after you get to 50 plus grand, 100 plus grand, what are you doing with that? And really it's how do I buy assets? How do I create passive income? How do I take this money, trade it for something, and that something will have money babies. Every single month or year, it spits off a certain percentage, 6, 8, 10, 12, 20% of new money coming out of this thing, right? Like your cash on cash return. That is the next part of the strategy. How do you learn something like that? And if you go back to the beginning of the conversation, we're talking about the board game Monopoly. It's buying real estate, right? And you start with a piece of property, and then you can add a house, and then another one, and another one, and then a hotel. So you're starting with real property and then continuing to upgrade that, or maybe 1031 that into a bigger deal. But it's just learning a strategy. And for us, it was real estate, right? We started with cheap little houses. That's what we knew. It was scary to do these big multi-million-dollar deals. So we did not start there, but we got to multi-million-dollar deals now, right? So start where you're comfortable, but dang, man, you just need to start. That's the really thing, is just take some massive action. You got to be saving that money, and then you have to be using that time to learn the strategy of what is next. And don't feel like you got to take all of this on your own. You could, potentially be a limited partner in some other person's deal. They can be the expert in these kind of deals. But make sure you do find an expert that has done this, has a lot of experience, and you can come alongside them. You may not have to put in all the time and the legwork and learning and legitimately becoming a real estate expert like we did. Like that was a lot of time. That's what we did. That was our thing. But if you have someone else that you know, like, and trust, and that's their thing, you can come onto their deals. But I would say the whole lesson here is, how do you get to, I have this money, it's going to make babies, and then it'll roll over, and those babies will make grandbabies, and just continue to compound interest this at a reasonable rate of at least 6 or 8 or 10 or 12%.
The one word that comes to mind on these two strategies you just mentioned was self-discipline. I think in order to have your income come in and have the self-discipline to tell yourself, I'm going to pay myself first, I'm going to pull this money out, and it's going to go into a sacred account. It takes a lot of self-discipline. And then in strategy 2, it takes a lot of self-discipline to first of all, not touch that money. And then second of all, to educate yourself on a certain strategy you're going to employ with that money so that it just doesn't sit there. Because I think a lot of times it might just sit there because people are going to have analysis paralysis and be like, okay, I have this money, but I don't know what to do with it. I don't know. Do I trust this guy who just came and said he wants to, compile a fund for a syndication for a multifamily deal? Like, do I trust him? I don't know anything about it. And so I think it's taking then that self-discipline to educate yourself in whatever field you're going to employ that money into.
Absolutely. So it makes me think, when we were younger, we had a bunch of different roommates. We were going through college and things, right? And there were some people that just always seemed to have bad luck. Like everything would go wrong just month after month after month, right? And now that we have educated and grown ourselves on the financial aspect of these things, you come at it from a different perspective. You look back and it was like, they had a crap strategy. Their strategy, they didn't have a strategy really, right? They didn't know that they were a pawn in someone else's game. And how can you get ahead if literally you are a pawn in someone else's game without valuable skill sets in the market, right? We had to climb out of that hole and educate ourselves and become people that we were not at that time. You cannot be the same person in order to accomplish this financial freedom goal. You literally have to grow yourself and become a new person in order to, really gain this financial intelligence, take this execution, have the self-discipline you talked about. Because honestly, a lot of people, they just stop growing themselves. You finish school and you're like, okay, I'm done learning. You're never done learning. Now it's how to invest, how to manage your money, right? These are adult things. You really don't get it in high school or even college. This is something you need to learn from shows like this, from YouTube, from books, right? Be a lifelong learner on investing, on cash flow management, and take this lesson or this talk on it being a game and figure out your own strategy. What is your definition of winning the game? How do you get there? How many years do you think you could do it in? And have a system or a plan, have numbers for that. Well, if I make this much and I save this much and I reinvest at this percentage, it will take me X amount of years.
Well, thanks for joining us on another episode of The Donkey and the Bee. As you all know, we do not have ads on this show, and it's all on purpose because I think they're incredibly obnoxious. So instead of having ads, we just have one ask. And I think this ask is super important because I think that this particular show, talking about financial freedom, can reach a broad band of people, right? So I'm sure there's at least 5 to 10 people that you can maybe think of, your parents, your kids, your aunt and uncles, coworker, sibling. They probably need to hear this. And so our one ask is just to share it with them. You literally just click share and you can share it along to whoever you'd like. Also click subscribe so you'll be notified of any new content we drop. And we will see you on the next one.